Translate this, Will Gates said, voice echoing off glass and marble. Do it right now, and I'll hire your mom. Will Gates leaned back in his chair, the city skyline glittering behind him like a crown. His emerald green suit caught the morning light as he waved a crisp document in the air. Translate this, he said, grinning toward the corner of the room, and I'll hire your mom right now. The boardroom went still. Executives shifted uncomfortably. The Arab investors, dressed in immaculate white thobes, glanced at one another, insult bleeding beneath their calm expressions. Where are you watching from tonight? If you are enjoying this story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like the video, and comment. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories, and trust me, you won't want to miss them. Now, let's continue. At the far end of the room stood Angela Moore, her cleaning cart parked near the glass wall, mop in hand. Beside her, in a yellow skirt and neatly pressed school blouse, Zara Moore froze. 12 years old, book bag still slung over her shoulder. Her mother's shift wasn't supposed to overlap the CEO's meeting, but today it had. Will Gates' smirk widened. What's wrong? He asked. Too young to understand adult work? No one laughed, not even his PR chief. The only sound was the hum of the air conditioning and the distant wail of a siren 50 floors below. Zara didn't answer. She just stared at him, steady, unblinking. Her small hands tightened around her Arabic workbook, its pages crumpled and thumb-stained from months of study. Angela whispered, "Zara, please," under her breath. But the girl didn't move. "Come on," Gates said, tapping the page. "Show us what you've got. Or does your mom's talent for cleaning not run in the family?" Dr. Helena Cruz, Global Operations Chief, looked away. She'd seen his cruelty before, but this felt different. Even the investors shifted in their seats. One of them murmured quietly in Arabic. "This is shameful." Gates didn't notice. He was performing. He leaned closer, voice dripping condescension. "Translate this, little girl. Let's see if you can tell us what real business sounds like." That was when Zara stepped forward. Slowly, silently. Her sneakers made no sound on the polished floor. She reached for the contract, her hand small against the page, her face unreadable. The room seemed to hold its breath as her eyes scanned the text. Arabic script. Dense, formal, technical. The kind of document that took lawyers weeks to draft. Then, in a calm voice that carried through the silence, Zara said, "This clause says your company accepts all penalties if the supplier fails to deliver. The English version says the opposite." Gates' smirk faltered. "What?" She kept reading, voice firm, accent perfect. "There are 2 more mistranslations. One in the indemnity section, one in the termination clause. The Arabic version would make you responsible for over $30 million in losses." A murmur swept the room. The lead investor leaned forward, whispering urgently to his translator, who nodded, stunned. Dr. Cruz rose halfway out of her chair. Gates' laughter died somewhere in his throat. Zara looked up at him. "You were about to sign it, weren't you?" For the first time all morning, the billionaire had no words. Angela's mop clattered to the floor. Phones came out. Someone recorded. In one heartbeat, the hierarchy of the room flipped. The man who thought he owned the building now stood exposed by the girl whose mother cleaned it. Helena Cruz's voice broke the silence. "Where did you learn Arabic, Zara?" Zara hesitated, glancing at her mother. "From the people who sweep your hallways," she said softly. "They speak more languages than your boardroom." No one breathed. Will Gates' empire of glass suddenly felt fragile. He straightened, trying to recover control, but his reflection in the window looked smaller than he remembered. Outside, Manhattan glittered, but inside, something far more valuable had just been uncovered. And before the day was over, the world would know her name. The elevator always hummed louder on the way down, as if the machine knew it was leaving the world of glass and gold for the one of bleach and sweat. Angela Moore stood in that humming silence, her daughter beside her, both gripping the handle of the cleaning cart like it was the last piece of solid ground left in their world. No one spoke. The marble lobby lights flickered above them, and every ding of a floor number felt like a reminder of what they'd just done, or rather, what Zara had done. Angela's hands trembled. "Zara," she whispered finally, voice low, brittle. "You shouldn't have—" "Mom," Zara interrupted gently, eyes still on the elevator doors. "He asked me to." Angela closed her eyes. She could still hear the boardroom echo, the billionaire's voice collapsing into silence, the murmurs in Arabic, the phones rising to record. Her heart still hadn't slowed down. When the doors opened onto the service corridor, the smell of disinfectant and old paint replaced the boardroom's expensive cologne. A janitor pushing a mop looked up, nodded respectfully at Angela, and froze when he saw Zara. "Habibti," he said in surprise. "You spoke Arabic. Upstairs?" Zara smiled shyly. "Tried to." The man broke into a grin. "You didn't try, you spoke. Everyone's talking about it already. Someone posted the video." Angela's stomach dropped. "Video?" He nodded, holding up his phone. There it was, Zara's calm voice, her small frame against the billionaire's towering arrogance. Subtitles already added, hundreds of comments flooding in. Zara watched the screen, her own face staring back at her. "Mom," she whispered, "they're calling me the girl who saved millions." Angela's hand found her shoulder. "They shouldn't be calling you anything," she said quietly. "These people, they'll twist it. They'll forget you're a child." But even as she said it, Angela knew the world above had already noticed. And Will Gate, the man who had humiliated them, wouldn't stay silent for long. That night, back in their small apartment across the river, the weight of the day hung over everything. The city skyline glowed in the distance, the same skyline that crowned Gates' empire, the same light that used to feel unreachable. Zara sat on the floor, surrounded by open notebooks, Arabic on one side, English on the other, scribbled words, phonetic guides, taped pages from borrowed dictionaries. Angela watched her in disbelief. You really understand all this?" Zara looked up, grinning. "Mostly. Remember the guys who work night shift at the loading bay? Omar, Kareem, and Noura? They teach me when you're cleaning the upper floors. And online I practice with an app. People from Dubai, Riyadh, Cairo. Some of them send me old contracts to practice." Angela shook her head. "You did all that? Here?" Zara nodded. "I like words. They make big people listen." Angela sat beside her. For years she'd scrubbed those words off the floors of the powerful. Confidential. Board meeting. Authorized personnel only. Words that kept her out. Now her daughter was breaking through them like glass. "I just wanted to help you," Zara said softly. "They shouldn't talk to you like that." Angela pulled her into her arms. "You don't ever need to prove our worth, baby. Not to them." But outside their apartment window, the night buzzed with messages, likes, reposts, interviews requested. Zara's phone, an old cracked screen, blinked with notifications she didn't yet understand the weight of. One comment, written in Arabic, stood out among the flood. "If not for this girl, our deal would have collapsed. Intelligence knows no uniform." By morning, Gate International Holdings would be on every headline. By afternoon, reporters would be at their door. And by evening, the same man who had mocked a janitor's daughter would be in crisis mode, realizing his empire was about to be defined by the voice he tried to silence. The skyline glittered beneath Will Gates' glass office, a kingdom of steel that still in his mind belonged to him. But for the first time in years, the reflection in his window wasn't power. It was panic. 3 million views. In less than 12 hours. The headline flashing across the muted wall screens read, "Billionaire CEO mocks janitor's daughter, gets schooled in Arabic." Will clenched his jaw. The thumbnail image, him mid-sneer, Zara calm and composed, looped endlessly on every news channel. A 12-year-old girl had rewritten his reputation overnight. He turned to his executive team, seated like statues in his private boardroom. PR chief Dana Fields looked pale. The head of global relations scrolled through angry emails from Middle Eastern partners. Even his legal counsel seemed smaller beneath the glare of the screens. "This is an ambush," Will snapped, pacing. "Some intern leaked the footage. Find them." Dana hesitated. "Sir, it wasn't an intern. The investors recorded it. They posted it themselves." He froze. "Excuse me." "The Emirati delegation," she continued carefully. "They said the incident showed, and I quote, the difference between arrogance and understanding. They're refusing further talks until we issue a formal apology to the girl." Silence fell. The sound of the city, the hum of elevators, the distant horns, filled the vacuum. Will's fist hit the glass table. "I'm not apologizing to a janitor's kid." Across from him, Dr. Helena Cruz, chief of global operations, watched him with calm detachment. Her tone was even, surgical. "You might want to reconsider," she said. "Because the girl you humiliated just saved us from a $27 million liability." Her translation was accurate. "I confirmed it myself." Will turned, voice sharp. "You what?" "She was right about the indemnity clause," Helena said. "And not just that. There are inconsistencies across several contracts. If they'd gone through, our company would have eaten every supplier penalty for the next fiscal quarter." The boardroom erupted in murmurs. One executive whispered, "She saved us." Will's glare silenced them. "We're not giving credit to some unverified street prodigy." Helena folded her arms. "Then perhaps we'll credit the lawsuits instead." He opened his mouth, but no words came out. For years, Gate International had been an empire built on fear and precision. His employees didn't speak, they obeyed. He'd prided himself on control, dominance, perfection. Now the internet had turned him into a meme. On another screen, a late-night show host's voice played over clips of the viral video. "Looks like the only thing this billionaire couldn't buy was a brain that listens." Laughter from the studio audience filled the silence. Helena's voice cut through the humiliation. "Sir, the board is convening in 1 hour. The investors want to know how we intend to respond." Will sank into his leather chair, fingers steepled beneath his chin. For the first time, the walls of his empire felt too thin, too fragile. He'd built this company on numbers, not people, yet a 12-year-old had outperformed his top linguists and his million-dollar legal team. He muttered under his breath, "How the hell did she even learn Arabic?" Helena didn't look up from her tablet. "Maybe you should ask her." He looked at her sharply. "Mr. Gate," she continued, "they want her back upstairs tomorrow. The delegation's returning to finalize negotiations, and they're insisting she be in the room." Will's knuckles went white. "She's a child," he hissed. Helena's eyes flicked to him, cold, steady. "A child who just kept your empire from collapsing." She stood, gathering her notes. "I'll inform her mother to bring her back in the morning." That night, as Manhattan glittered beneath him, Will Gate poured himself a drink and stared at the reflection of the city. 1,000 lights he used to think bowed to his own. Now, somewhere in that same skyline, a janitor's daughter was becoming the most powerful voice he'd ever faced. And for the first time, he couldn't silence it. The next morning, the world had changed, not in silence, but in sound. Phones buzzed, screens glowed, voices carried her name. Zara Moore, 12 years old, the girl who spoke Arabic to a billionaire. Angela woke to the vibration of her phone on the nightstand. Message after message, pings from numbers she didn't recognize. The old television flickered to life on its own, auto-playing a morning news segment. Overnight, footage from inside Gate International Holdings went viral, showing a young girl correcting billionaire CEO Will Gate during a high-stakes meeting. The internet is calling her the little translator. Angela sat up, heart pounding. Zara was still asleep beside her, curled under the blanket, school bag at her feet. The soft light from the screen painted her face, calm, unaware that her world had just exploded. The reporter's voice continued. Millions are praising Zara's brilliance and condemning Gates' arrogance. Global investors are reportedly reconsidering their ties to his company. Angela grabbed the remote and muted it. For a long moment, she just stared at her daughter. She'd raised Zara to survive quietly, not to stand in the spotlight. And yet somehow the world had placed her there. By noon, the outside world found them. Reporters waited at the apartment gate. Neighbors peeked through curtains. Someone had slipped a letter under the door. An invitation from a news channel offering an exclusive primetime interview. Angela tore it up before Zara could see it. Zara was sitting at the small kitchen table, reading comments on an old tablet. Her eyes moved across the screen with a strange mix of curiosity and disbelief. She's a genius. Hire her mom now. Proof that brilliance comes from anywhere. This kid just saved millions. Then the darker ones followed. No way she did that alone. Probably staged. Another diversity stunt. Her smile faded. Why do they hate me, Mom? Angela knelt beside her. They don't hate you. They just don't understand what they can't explain. Zara nodded slowly, but her eyes stayed fixed on the glowing comments, words from people she'd never met deciding who she was. Across town at the top of the skyscraper, Will Gates stared out over Manhattan, the news screens flickering across his office like a courtroom. Stock prices were slipping. Investors demanded statements. PR advisors suggested a strategic apology. Dana Fields, his communications director, stood by the door, tablet in hand. We've had 47 media requests. Most want Zara for interviews. Some want her to headline youth innovation conferences. You're trending as the corporate Goliath, not in a good way. Gates' voice was calm, too calm. Do I look like I care about hashtags? Helena Cruz entered behind her, tablet glowing with analytics. You should. Our Middle Eastern partners froze negotiations this morning. They won't resume unless Zara's involved. Will turned slowly, disbelief in his eyes. She's a child. Helena held his gaze. A child who speaks the language that built your deal. The one you mocked. The silence that followed was heavier than any insult. Somewhere deep down he knew the truth. Control was no longer his currency. That evening, as the sun set over the city, Angela received a call. The voice on the other end was calm, professional, and familiar. Mrs. Moore, this is Dr. Helena Cruz from Gate International. Mr. Gate requests that you and Zara return to the office tomorrow. There's another meeting. Dubai division. A translation issue. Angela hesitated. You want her back there? After what he did? There was a pause. Then Helena's voice softened. Let's just say this time he needs her more than he'll admit. Angela looked at Zara, who had fallen asleep at the table, her Arabic notes scattered beside an untouched bowl of soup. She brushed a curl from her daughter's forehead and whispered, You're changing their world, baby. Just don't let it change you. The car ride to Gate International felt longer than it was. Rain streaked down the tinted windows, cutting the city lights into trembling ribbons. Angela held her daughter's hand the whole way, her thumb tracing slow circles against Zara's palm, as if she could shield her from what waited at the top of those glass towers. A week ago, they were just another invisible family. Now, the world knows her daughter's name. Reporters had camped outside their building all morning, shouting questions as they left. Zara, how many languages can you really speak? Angela, is it true you worked for Mr. Gate before? Do you think he owes your family something? Cameras flashed. Angela didn't answer a single one. She kept her head high as security ushered them through the private entrance of Gate International Holdings, the same place that had once humiliated them. The marble floors still gleamed, but today, every reflection felt different. Zara's steps, small but certain, echoed across the hall. Waiting in the executive corridor was Dr. Helena Cruz, Will Gates' senior advisor, a woman whose calm had the sharpness of glass. "Mrs. Moore," she said, extending a hand. "Thank you for coming, Zara. We're grateful you're here." Angela's jaw tightened. "You didn't leave much of a choice, did you?" Helena exhaled slowly. "The Dubai partners are on a live call in 5 minutes. They've requested the same translator who handled the initial conversation." Angela's eyes narrowed. "You mean the child your boss mocked on camera?" Helena hesitated. "Yes, that one." The doors to the executive boardroom opened, and the hum of tension swallowed them whole. Will Gates stood at the far end, his suit immaculate, his expression unreadable. He didn't greet them, didn't even look up, but everyone else in the room went still. Zara was a small figure among a circle of giants, but somehow every head turned her way. Helena guided her to a seat beside her. "Listen carefully," she whispered. "Don't let them rush you." The conference screen came alive, a grid of foreign executives, voices crisp and formal in Arabic. Their lead negotiator began reading clauses at a pace meant to intimidate. A hired translator tried to follow, but halfway through the second paragraph, Zara's brow furrowed. She heard it instantly, a subtle shift. The word takhir had been rendered as delay. But it didn't mean delay. It meant deferral by mutual agreement. A small mistake, big enough to unravel a contract worth $90 million. Before she could stop herself, Zara spoke. "Excuse me," she said, her voice soft but unwavering. "That's not what he said." All eyes turned. The translator froze mid-sentence. Gates' head lifted, slow and deliberate. Zara continued, switching fluidly into Arabic, her pronunciation effortless, her tone respectful. "He said the deferral is by mutual consent. Both sides agree, not one imposing on the other." The negotiator on screen blinked, then smiled faintly. "That is correct," he said in English. "The girl listens carefully." Helena's lips curved just slightly. Gates said nothing, but a muscle in his jaw flexed. For the next 20 minutes, Zara guided the conversation, translating with precision, empathy, and rhythm. She caught nuances in tone the adults missed. The politeness that meant pressure, the silence that meant refusal, the laughter that disguised offense. When the final clause was read, the negotiator leaned closer to his camera. "We accept," he said, "on one condition." He smiled directly at Zara. "The girl translates our future meetings as well." Helena looked at Gate, then at Zara. "They've agreed," she said quietly. "The deal's back." Applause rippled through the room. Executives shook hands. Laptops snapped shut. Relief filled the air like oxygen returning to starved lungs. Only Will Gate didn't move. He was still staring at the child who had saved him. Again. After the meeting, Helena approached. "You were brilliant, Zara." Angela smiled, pride and fear mingling in her eyes. Zara looked up shyly. "I just didn't want anyone to lose their job." Before Helena could respond, Gates' voice broke the silence. "Zara." She turned. His expression was unreadable, part calculation, part something else. Regret, maybe. "Good work," he said simply. It wasn't an apology, but for a man like Will Gate, it was the closest thing to one. Zara nodded. "Thank you, sir." That night, the clip hit the internet before they even reached home. News anchors replayed it in slow motion, the billionaire's face tightening as a little girl corrected him in fluent Arabic. "The second time she saved him," one headline read. "From janitor's daughter to company savior," said another. "Who is Zara Moore?" Angela turned off the TV. The silence that followed felt heavier than applause. Her daughter sat beside her, head drooping with exhaustion, still clutching the notebook she carried everywhere, half doodles, half translations. Fame has found them now, and fame doesn't knock. It breaks the door and moves in. The email arrived at dawn. Subject line: "A new beginning for Gate International and for Zara Moore." Angela read it twice before her coffee even finished brewing. The company logo glowed in blue at the top, all polish and promise. Beneath it, words that made her stomach tighten. We'd like to feature Zara as the voice of Gate International's new diversity innovation campaign. Her story embodies the future we believe in, talent beyond titles. We'll ensure your family is compensated generously. Please confirm availability for tomorrow's press conference. Public Relations Division, Office of Will Gate. Angela's hands trembled slightly as she lowered the phone. Zara, she called softly, glancing toward the small bedroom down the hall. Her daughter was already awake, sitting cross-legged on her bed, a notebook open, pencil tapping against the page. Arabic characters lined the margins in neat rows, each one perfectly formed. Mom, Zara said without looking up, do you know what amana means? Angela forced a smile. No, baby. What does it mean? Zara looked up, eyes bright. It means trust, or responsibility. Depends how you use it. Angela's smile faded. That's beautiful, she murmured. And dangerous, she thought, because men like Will Gate didn't understand amana. They only understood ownership. By the time they arrived at the Gate Tower that afternoon, the lobby had transformed. Photographers lined the marble walls. Large banners flashed across LED screens. From hidden talent to global voice, the story of Zara Moore. Angela froze mid-step. They hadn't even agreed to this yet. Helena Cruz met them at the elevator, eyes apologetic. I told them it was too soon, she whispered. But PR moved fast. The board thinks this could shift the narrative after, well, you know. You mean after your boss humiliated a janitor's kid on camera? Angela's tone was cold. Helena didn't flinch. After the world saw it. She looked at Zara, her expression softening. You don't have to do this, sweetheart. Not unless you want to. Zara hesitated, gaze sweeping across the glossy posters, her own face smiling, surrounded by slogans about equality and innovation. It feels weird, she said finally. Like they're talking about me, not to me. Helena nodded slowly. That's because they are. Inside the boardroom, Will Gate was waiting, not in his usual command pose behind the head of the table, but sitting off to the side, sleeves rolled, tie loosened. He looked tired, human even. Zara, he said as they entered. Angela. A pause. Thank you for coming. Angela's eyes narrowed. We didn't have much of a choice, did we? Gate exhaled. You do now. He gestured toward the table. Sit. Zara climbed into a chair, her feet barely touching the floor. She looked at him, calm but curious. He held her gaze longer than he meant to. There was something disarming about her. Not just her intelligence, but her quiet dignity. The kind that couldn't be manufactured. You've made quite an impact, he said finally. The Dubai deal is back on. Investors are calling. People respect you. People respect Arabic, Zara corrected softly. They just didn't listen to it before. That hit him harder than he showed. The PR director, a woman with perfect posture and an even more perfect smile, slid a glossy folder across the table. This is the campaign draft, she said. Press conference tomorrow. Zara will appear with Mr. Gate to discuss cross-cultural learning and innovation. Angela opened the folder and froze. There was her daughter's face on the cover. A tagline beneath it read, From cleaner's child to company hero. Angela's voice sharpened. You're not using her like that. Gate frowned. It's just a headline. It's an insult, Angela shot back. You think poverty's a prop for your redemption tour? The room went silent. Even the PR director's smile faltered. Zara's small voice cut through the tension. Mr. Gate, she said, can I ask something? He turned. Of course. Do you actually believe people like my mom belong here? Or do you just need the world to think you do? The question landed like a stone in still water. Helena closed her eyes briefly, as if bracing for impact. Gate didn't answer right away. He leaned back, eyes flickering between mother and daughter, between the past that served him and the mirror that now reflected him. "I don't know yet," he said quietly. It wasn't the answer anyone expected, but it was honest. And that honesty, that fracture in his armor, changed something in the air. As they left the building, Zara looked up at her mother. "Mom," she said softly, "you were right. They don't see people, they see stories." Angela squeezed her hand. "Then we'll make sure they hear the truth." Behind them, from the top floor window, Will Gate watched them go. The janitor and her daughter walking through the rain, heads high, shoulders straight. He'd built an empire in control. Now, a child had taken that control away. Not with force, but with truth, and for the first time in years he wasn't sure if that loss scared him or set him free. The night was heavy with storm clouds over Manhattan. On the 70th floor of Gate International, a fluorescent hum filled the translation department, the graveyard shift few ever noticed. Samir Patel, junior analyst, rubbed his eyes and scrolled through archived folders. He'd been tasked with reviewing translation discrepancies from the Dubai negotiations, a boring cleanup job, until he found a file that didn't belong. File name: cultural nuances, handwritten notes, unverified source. He clicked. The PDF opened to scanned pages, notebook paper, lined and smudged. Each page was filled with neat handwriting, both English and Arabic, color-coded and annotated. At the bottom corner of each page, Z. More. Samir blinked. No way. He skimmed the first paragraph, a warning about an indemnity clause mistranslation. The same clause Zara had exposed in front of the entire board. The notes were dated 3 months before the incident. 3. She'd tried to warn them, and someone had ignored her. By morning, the documents were in Helena Cruz's hands. Her jaw tightened as she flipped through the pages. "Who filed this under unverified?" she asked. Samir hesitated. "It was marked by legal, specifically Director Haynes's department." Helena's gaze darkened. Haynes reports directly to Gate. The realization settled like a weight in her chest. This wasn't oversight. It was dismissal. The system didn't just overlook Zara. It buried her voice. When Will Gate arrived for the emergency board meeting that afternoon, the mood was already different. Investors had flown in early. Cameras were off. The air reeked of scrutiny. Helena stood near the front, files in hand, her expression cold as stone. "Mr. Gate," she began, "before we start damage control for the next PR storm, I think the board deserves to see something." She tapped the screen. The projector lit up, displaying Zara's handwritten notes, magnified for the entire room to see. Angela and Zara, seated quietly near the door, watched in silence. "These documents," Helena said, "were submitted to your translation division months ago. They identify the exact same legal errors that nearly destroyed your company. They were dismissed because the author lacked proper credentials." A murmur rippled across the room. Gate leaned forward, his jaw tight. "Where did you get those?" "From your archives," Helena replied, "filed under irrelevant submissions." She turned toward the board. This company nearly signed $1 billion disaster because a janitor's daughter was considered irrelevant. The silence that followed was brutal. Investors whispered among themselves. Gates' hands twitched against the table. Finally, one of the Middle Eastern partners, Sheikh Al-Fahed, stood, his tailored suit immaculate, his gaze cutting. "In my culture," he said evenly, "we have a proverb. He who ignores a small voice will one day kneel before it." He looked directly at Gate. "You, Mr. Gate, have been given such a voice." Gate swallowed. His throat felt like sandpaper. Helena stepped forward, her tone quieter but sharper. "I'm proposing we create a cross-cultural communication initiative, a permanent department to ensure accuracy, empathy, and inclusion in every deal we make, led by Zara Moore, overseen by Angela Moore. A collective intake of breath. Angela froze. I clean floors, she whispered. Helena smiled faintly. And saved a company. Gates' composure cracked. You can't be serious, he said. We don't run empires on charity. Zara's voice, small but clear, cut through the tension. Then maybe that's why yours almost fell. Every head turned toward her. She stood, notebook clutched to her chest, eyes steady on the man who once mocked her mother. You thought this was about charity, she continued softly. It's about truth. You built a company that speaks in profits but never listens in people. I just translated what you refused to hear. Gate opened his mouth. She took a deep breath, but she wasn't done. A single Arabic proverb, her tone deliberate and precise. Al-kibr yuskit al-rajul, arrogance topples the man. Gate frowned, trying to repeat it, but his pronunciation faltered. Zara corrected him gently, her voice echoing across the marble walls. The investors laughed softly. Not mockery, recognition. The child who had once been invisible now stood as their translator, teacher, and conscience. The boardroom erupted, not in chaos, but applause. Even Helena smiled, arms crossed with quiet pride. Gate didn't clap. He just sat there, still, breathing slowly, as realization dawned. He had spent years perfecting numbers, mergers, deals, but he had never learned the most basic language of all, humanity. His gaze shifted to Angela. I don't know how to fix this, he said quietly. Angela met his eyes, her voice steady. Then start by listening. As the meeting adjourned, Helena gathered the files and handed them to Zara. These belong to you, she said softly. They always did. Zara smiled, not triumphantly, but peacefully. I didn't do it to be seen, she said. I did it to help. Helena nodded. That's why everyone finally sees you. That evening, the headlines blazed. Janitor's daughter leads Gate International Reform. Board approves global inclusion program. The PR team scrambled to control the story, but for once it wasn't theirs to tell. And the next morning, Will Gate appeared on the janitorial floor, alone, no cameras, no entourage, carrying 2 coffee cups and a folder marked, The Moore Initiative. He wasn't here to command. He was here to begin again. The janitorial floor had never seen a billionaire before, not without cameras anyway. But that morning, Will Gate stepped out of the private elevator, no entourage, no PR team, just 2 coffee cups and a leather folder tucked beneath his arm. He paused at the doorway, eyes adjusting to the fluorescent light, the scent of bleach and pine cleaner filling the air. Angela Moore looked up from her mop bucket, startled. Her first instinct was to hide the cleaning rag behind her back, as if it were something shameful. Don't, Gate said softly. You built this place cleaner than I ever ran it. Angela froze. Mr. Gate? He nodded once. Will. Just Will today. He placed 1 coffee cup on the small metal table beside her cart. 2 sugars, no cream, he said. I asked around. Angela didn't move. Why are you here? He exhaled slowly, eyes weary but clear. Because I owe you more than a job, more than a headline. He set the folder on the table, embossed in silver letters, The Moore Initiative, proposal for a global talent discovery program. Zara appeared from the corridor, school uniform slightly wrinkled, backpack slung over one shoulder. Her eyes widened at the sight of him. You came here? Gate nodded. Didn't think you'd believe me otherwise. She smiled faintly. You don't seem like someone who likes being uncomfortable. He actually laughed, a small, honest sound that surprised even him. That's true, he admitted, but maybe comfort's what blinded me. He gestured to the folder. It's a scholarship fund. Training, mentorship, education for kids like you from families like yours. People whose potential gets overlooked because of where they come from or what they wear to work. Angela stared at him, suspicion and hope wrestling in her eyes. And what do you get out of it? Gate hesitated. Then, perspective. The word landed heavier than she expected. He sat on a nearby bench, shoulders slumped, not in defeat, but humility. I built an empire out of precision, he said, but I never learned empathy. You both taught me that. Zara tilted her head. We didn't teach you, she said gently. You just started listening. Gates' lips curved into a faint, humbled smile. Maybe that's what leadership really is. Helena Cruz entered then, her heels echoing on the concrete floor. She carried a stack of folders and a tired grin. Press wants a statement, she said. But I told them to wait. This moment isn't theirs to sell. Gate glanced at Angela. You'll head the initiative with Helena. The company needs leaders who know the ground they walk on. You know it better than anyone. Angela blinked. You're serious? He nodded. Completely. I've already cleared it with the board. For a long moment, Angela said nothing. Then she reached for Zara's hand and looked him in the eye. Thank you, she said quietly. But not for the title, for finally seeing us. Gate swallowed hard. It took me long enough. Later that day, as sunlight streamed through the high lobby windows, the company gathered for the official announcement. Cameras flashed, journalists scribbled, and behind the podium stood a banner that read, The More Initiative, because talent has no title. But this time, it wasn't Will Gate at the microphone. It was Angela. Her voice was calm, steady, radiant with quiet strength. My name is Angela Moore, she began. For years I cleaned these floors, and I saw reflections of success that didn't include me. But today, we begin something different. We start building a world that listens to every voice, no matter how small. The crowd erupted in applause. Gate stood off to the side, hands folded, no spotlight, no ego, just pride. Then Zara stepped up beside her mother, and together they unveiled the new logo, a stylized open book shaped like a pair of wings. Zara leaned into the microphone. I used to think I was invisible, she said. Now I know. Invisibility was just the world's way of saying it wasn't looking hard enough. Another wave of applause rose through the atrium. In that sound, something healed. Later, after the reporters left and the cameras dimmed, Gate lingered in the quiet lobby. He looked up at the building's gleaming logo and whispered almost to himself, You saved more than my company, Zara. You saved my sight. Zara smiled, the same gentle confidence that had silenced a skyscraper weeks before. You just needed someone to translate it. Months later, Zara stands on a global stage at the International Diversity Innovation Summit. She isn't just the girl who translated a contract, she's the voice of a movement. And when she speaks, her words echo the story that began in humiliation and ended in vision. My mother cleaned this building. I just cleaned its vision. The stage lights were blinding, but Zara had never seen so clearly. Thousands filled the glass hall of the International Diversity Innovation Summit, the same kind of crowd that once looked right through her. World leaders, CEOs, journalists, educators, all waiting for the girl who'd rewritten the story of worth. Behind her, the banner read, The More Initiative, because talent has no title. A ripple of applause moved through the audience as she stepped to the podium, microphone trembling slightly in her hand. Angela watched from the front row, tears gathering at the corners of her eyes. Will Gate sat beside her, no longer the untouchable giant of glass towers, but a man rebuilt by humility. Zara took a deep breath. When I was 8, she began, I thought power lived in silence. I thought if you were quiet and worked hard enough, the world would eventually notice. She looked up, her gaze steady. It doesn't. It notices noise. It notices names. And people like my mother, people who clean, build, and fix the world, don't have those. A hush fell over the room. My mother cleaned this building, Zara continued. She cleaned the floors that powerful men walked on. And when they spilled their arrogance, She cleaned that too, without ever asking for credit. Angela's hand covered her mouth, shaking softly. Zara's voice grew stronger. But one day, I realized something. You can't polish the floor of a system that refuses to see its own reflection. Gasps rippled through the crowd. She smiled then, not bitterly, but with the gentle grace of someone who had learned forgiveness. So I stopped waiting to be seen, she said, and I started speaking in the only way I knew how, by translating truth. A pause. And when truth speaks, even billionaires listen. The audience erupted in applause, thunderous, rising, alive. Later, during the press reception, reporters crowded around her, thrusting microphones forward. Zara, what's next for you? Are you joining the company full-time? Do you see yourself as the future of Gate International? Zara smiled, unbothered by the flashbulbs. I see myself, she said simply. That's enough for now. Angela wrapped her arm around her daughter. You've already done more than enough, she whispered. Will Gate approached quietly, his expression unreadable. He extended a small card, not corporate, not branded, just embossed letters that read, Zara Moore, language consultant, cultural advisor. She looked up at him, curious. He shrugged. We still have deals in 17 countries that don't understand us, he said. Maybe you can fix that. Zara chuckled. Maybe I already did. They laughed. The kind of laugh that doesn't erase the past but redefines it. That evening, as the summit hall emptied, Angela and Zara stood by the massive glass windows overlooking the skyline. The city lights flickered below, towers of steel and gold, all looking somehow smaller than they used to. Angela whispered, Your father would be proud. Zara leaned her head on her mother's shoulder. I think he'd say the same thing you did. Angela smiled. What's that? That we built this from nothing. Outside, a street cleaner passed beneath the tower, reflective vest catching the glow of headlights. He looked up briefly, as if sensing something shift in the world above him, something invisible becoming seen. Inside, the lights dimmed, and on the great digital screen that once bore the company's logo, a new phrase shimmered into view. See everyone. Months later, the Moore Initiative had chapters in 12 countries, scholarships for workers' children, workshops for companies to listen before they lead. A new culture was forming, one voice at a time, and in every program brochure, beneath the sleek logo, a single quote appeared in gold lettering. My mother cleaned this building. I just cleaned its vision. Zara Moore. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as interesting and even more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.